92.3 Rochester. The sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan. Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
When you're trying to develop players, we don't let things slide. Because as soon as you start letting things slide, now it starts to become a habit. And that's not necessarily a good habit. So I think just the attention to detail, and then once it clicks where you're like, oh, I'm good to go.
We're going to take the ones out, play the other guys, take a good look at them.
Mike Danger.
I don't like it, Gene. I don't like it. The only move they've made that I like this offseason, is John Perry. John Perry is the move that makes sense to me. This move does not make sense to me.
Gene Battaglia.
Sean McDermott isn't playing any guessing games, cutting right to the chase. No starters are going to play in this game. Yeah, I think the NFL has a real big problem. And yeah, it's preseason football. Yay.
I like the preseason.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan. Rochester.
Yeah, I caught some of Bobby Babbich's press conference earlier today. He said something, and I'm going to pull a piece of it, and I'm sure it's taken out of context. But when he said it, my ears perked up because I believe that actually the opposite is true of what he said. He made a point to say that we're not a results-driven business. That their defense isn't a results-driven defense. I'm like, dude, everything is results-driven. Every walk of life is. What do you mean you're not results driven?
Yeah, I think he gets over his skis sometimes, and that's.
Did you hear that as well?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because you can kind of cut that out. But if you know Bobby Babbich and you listen to enough of his press conferences, he goes by the, well, either you're growing every day or dying every day. So really, all he's concerned about is the player getting better? Is this getting better? But if you just isolate that just doesn't sound really good.
No, it kind of sounds completely out of touch. Like everything in every walk of life is based on results. If you want any level of success, you're in a results-driven business. Like results are all that matters.
What would be like a business that isn't based on results? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Art? Like if all that matters is the art, and I don't really care if it sells or not, but I want even this at some point you got to feed yourself.
You're going to starve, yes. Yeah. Hence the term starving artist, right? I just heard that, and I'm like, okay, I know he's a high energy guy, and I know that this is his first crack at doing this, but when I heard that, I'm like, ooh, yeah, no, that's not. I don't think that's true. I don't think. Now I think you're just talking just to talk, just to fill space, and you're not really sure of what it is you're saying, because I believe you are actually in a results-driven business. Let's say week 1 happens and the Bills' defense gets torched. Are you going to be able to say as an excuse, well, we're not a results-driven business? No, you are. You are. If Marvin Harrison Jr. gets free and runs all over the secondary, that's a result that you're going to need to work on.
I think we'd have to hear the whole thing in its entirety.
Yes. When he said it, though, and I, admittedly, I know I'm nitpicking a little bit and pulling a small piece of what he said.
No, it's not a nitpick. It really is.
When I heard it, my ears perked up, and I don't know. I don't know if anybody else caught that during that press conference. You know what? We welcome you into the Sports Bar. We're going to talk later this afternoon to Alex Brasky of the Batavia Daily News. He was there, and maybe we can ask him about that a little bit. He also is the publisher of Bills Digest, right here, right now, the podcast. Brasky, one of our favorites, at practice today in Orchard Park, and he'll give us the latest from the Bills.
Yeah, who is practicing, his thoughts here on all these injuries, certainly. And, we're cut-down day coming. And, oh, by the way, there is a game for anybody that cares, although it'll be kind of comical. Ben DiNucci starting for the Buffalo Bills.
It's all been comical.
Yeah, some guy named Anthony Brown backing him up just because you need a healthy body. We're already kind of looking ahead. We'll talk to Alex Brasky, Batavia Daily News, Bills Digest, right here, right now, podcast, 4 p.m. hour.
Now, a lot of you have flipped the switch and gotten really into fantasy football in the last couple of weeks, last couple of days specifically. I know that ESPN has been doing their little fantasy marathon, so it's become a little bit more forefront, a little bit more front and center. I named my fantasy football team names in the last 24 hours. That's a big event for me every year. Sigmund Bloom, one of our favorites from Football Guys, will be stopping by the sports bar here in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, as there's all these issues with wide receiver that we can quiz him on, certainly. We can quiz him on different philosophies, whether that's zero RB, what about Superflex. There are plenty of topics. If you have a question, you can hit us up. The Fan Rochester is our handle.
Yeah, and you could also check us out online. We're streaming on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. We're streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheFanRochester. You can also hear us on the free-to-download Odyssey app where we sound our best, and on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. Gino, I feel refreshed. I got a couple of days in the big city under my belt in Toronto the last couple of days.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to get back after it here with you. I know that since we last spoke last Friday, a lot has changed around the Buffalo Bills. A lot has changed around the NFL. I feel like some changes here in our own local community, our own local sports community. There's some changes going on. Where do you want to start?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Where do we want to start? Let's start with the Bills, and we'll get to what we do know, what we don't know about this Nighthawk sale. Yeah, that's right. We got that today, and then we'll get to – at some point we'll hit on Tua today or not. But we all hold on to this truth that don't read too much into the preseason. And since you and I last spoke – the Buffalo Bills won a preseason game, 9-3.
Yeah,
over the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's apropos. Like, don't make it 10-3. Make it 9-3.
They listen to the sports bar
9 times.
Gosh, was that terrible. And, like, my take Monday, Danger, was what other thing in the world do we all say the product is terrible, and yet we still keep buying it?
Fast food.
But there's a redeeming value. Going down, it's tasty. There's a redeeming value.
Okay, all right.
No, you get fast food because it's delicious.
I get it.
Okay, what is the redeem? Anything else would be like, no, I'm not buying this, and whatever it is goes out of business. But with preseason football,
smoking.
Again, addictive. There's some okay, or we're addicted to football. Is that it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I think we're all junkies. We're all absolute football junkies. And we know that the NFL has us. They know that they have us. They know that we can't imagine our falls without their product. And that's why they'll charge what they charge. And that's why we'll go to the games. And that's why we'll mortgage our future to be able to be a part of the action, even if the quality of the product isn't there. And it certainly isn't there in the preseason. You can watch preseason football and have some takeaways. And there's certainly some great storylines. I know that a lot of people spent the last few days talking about Joe Andreessen and what a great story this is. And ultimately, what does it lead to, Gino? Does it lead to the guy making the team? Is he a practice squad player? Is he?
I'll at minimum, like it was, pat on the head. Great. They're bringing in the local kid who played 1 year at UB, and you look at him, it's undersized. Oh, my gosh, they're actually starting him, which – correct move. Don't play Bernard. Don't play Josh Allen. All right, I would have preferred you didn't play Curtis Samuel in that game, but I digress. And then you see him go out there, 12 tackles.
Yeah, great game.
Against the first string, too. He was out there for Pittsburgh, shedding a block, getting lateral. Okay, that's a great game. Other positive. Greg Rousseau looked like a man. That was your starting right tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers that he just tossed right aside, came right through, 2 sacks early on, and that's the hope, right? Could Greg Rousseau actually be a defensive lineman that other teams actually have to account for? Like, you don't have that, or entering this year, Von Miller isn't that anymore. Nobody else on the defensive line is that right now, but can you have a defensive lineman that, hey, you know what, we got a chip on this guy, or we got to make sure – maybe Rousseau develops into that, but that was certainly a positive. What else?
Well, the run game. The run game looked better in week 2.
Ray Davis.
Right, Ray Davis looked good. Even Frank Gore Jr. looked all right. 5.1 yards a carry against the Steelers. I mean, I know that the reports out of practice this week haven't been favorable for Tyler Bass, but he was 3 for 3 in the game.
Right. Today, not good with Bass. We'll get Brasky's take on that in the 4 p.m. hour. But when it mattered, okay, he's putting it through the uprights. And Mitchell Trubisky just did not look good. Now he's hurt, too.
Yeah.
So that was the other storyline that while you're gone Monday, Danger, like McDermott, is talking in the 3 p.m. hour, and then all of a sudden he just comes on. And when has this ever happened with McDermott? Never. In the years of Sean McDermott covering, when it comes to player personnel decisions on a Monday, does he ever come out right away and say, yeah, we're not playing the starters coming up on Saturday? Like, whoa, okay, that's the first thing. Wow, that's, okay, refreshing, and I think we all can kind of agree, oh, this is the reason why. And when you hear, Trubisky and Curtis Samuel and Quentin Morris, all these players, some varying degree of week to week, you're – okay, this is the reason here. We actually need to field a team coming up against Arizona on September the 8th.
I was somewhat surprised that when last we were on Friday, the word was that Josh Allen was going to play potentially up to a quarter in the Steelers game, depending on the weather, maybe a quarter plus, and he didn't play any. It was all Trubisky from the start. And I'm not sure if that had anything to do with the field condition going in or just the idea of, hey, we've seen enough. Let's preserve him and let's make sure he's good to go for week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I although nothing was said definitively, and the reports were because they had it all covered by the time the game was there. It wasn't like there was this wet field or it started back up raining. It was actually okay in Pittsburgh, but yeah, if it's raining all day, yeah, and let's pull the plug on that. And the funny thing was, nobody really knew that was the plan until it actually happened. So if you're watching the game, the Bills start out on defense, and wait a second, they have Andreessen out there? What is that all about? Well, the Tasker's explaining they decided to rest Terrell Bernard. I'm thinking to myself, okay, and I could feel my blood pressure going. You're resting your middle linebacker. You're the most important guy.
That comes Saturday. It'll be Ben DiNucci starting for the Bills. Of course, Ben DiNucci is going to be starting for the Bills on Saturday, Gene, because he's Italian. He just shows up 2 weeks. He muscles his way into a starting role with this team. You don't think that guy is special? That's a special player.
This is comical, though. I mean, nothing against Anthony Brown, but where did he come from? He was with the Ravens. Okay, yes, that's true, but where was he this camp? Oh, he was with the Raiders, that preseason game in Minnesota, didn't see the field, and then he's cut the next day. He was cut in favor of Nathan Peterman coming back.
Yeah, That's
oh, my
right.
gosh. We're a step below Peterman with Anthony Brown. This is going to be 10 years from now, Danger. Like, fun trivia. Okay, tell us who were the 2 quarterbacks in the Bills' final preseason game in the year 2024.
It all makes sense, though. It's not what you know. It's who you know. And in the case of Peterman, when the Raiders signed him, I'm mad at myself for not recognizing that it would be the Raiders picking him up when the Saints cut him loose, because Peterman has familiarity with Luke Getsy's terrible offense that is now in Vegas.
And when we were going over the list, we heard Trubisky was down. This is like the first time around. Well, he wasn't down. He missed a day. Hey, actually, they need a quarterback. It was Bouchel, actually. Mm-hmm. Boy, this camp had some really – Bouchel's not here anymore. Oh, gosh, they need a quarterback. Let's look. Didn't put 2 and 2 together. Wait a second. Joe Brady. Hey, look at Sean Payton. Who was with Sean Payton last year? Ben DiNucci.
Yeah. Ben DiNucci gets the start on Saturday.
Can we just call him Nooch?
Hey, Ben DiNucci.
We had some guy at Aquinas. They just called him Nooch.
Nooch?
Nooch, yeah.
I worked with a Nucci, and we called him Nooch.
Nooch, yeah.
Not DiNucci. It was just Nucci. Nooch. Hey, Ben DiNucci. Speaking of Sean Payton, he made the announcement today that it will be Bo Nix, another rookie quarterback, starting week 1 for the Denver Broncos.
Not surprising based on how Bo Nix has kind of come out. And remember, oh, my gosh, why do they have him third on the depth chart? Okay, that's just paper. Like, he'll be the starter. And sure enough, he was a starter. If you're going to invest top 12 when you don't have anything else kind of going on, and this is – it's like Michael Penix. Bo Nix has been around the block. Bo Nix was that guy, like, okay, you're still there.
I swear.
Yeah.
I thought Bo Nix was backing up Cam Newton at Auburn. I feel like he was in college for 10 years. Yeah. I went like, what? This guy was in college forever and all these different programs, and then finally now in the NFL. What is he, 35 years old? I have no idea. But Bo Nix will be, and you'll hear this. I don't know if you've heard this yet, but you probably will at some point realize that Bo Nix is the first rookie quarterback to start a season for the Broncos since John Elway back in 1983. I have a feeling you're going to hear that a couple hundred times through the course of the season.
What was the guy? Was it Hinton? Remember, because of the COVID year, they didn't have a quarterback, and literally they had to go. That's how bad it got for Denver.
So bad.
Yeah.
Denver's been a mess, and maybe Nix is the guy with Sean Payton calling the shots to turn things around. He beat out Stidham, and then Zach Wilson is still on that roster as well as a number 3, which is kind of crazy to think that a former number 2 overall pick got beat out by Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix. That's the news out of Denver. I also know that there was some news this weekend, Gino, out of Miami. And Miami and Minnesota are going to play each other at some point here. And Tua, give me some color here, because I was north of the border for the last 2 days, and all I really knew is that Patrick Laine got signed by the Canadians. That's all they really want to talk about there. And Chad Kelly was back at practice.
Yeah,
these are the important things in Toronto. Not.
Isn't it I guess we here in Western New York, it's Bills focused, but up there, holy cow, are they provincial?
Oh, yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
I was curious, so I was watching, their version of SportsCenter, and it was Patrick Laine, and a 20-minute discussion on Patrick Laine to the Canadians, and the return of Chad Kelly to practice, leading up to a Thursday night game. That his return after a 9-game suspension for being Chad Kelly
9 times.
And I'm like, yeah, they're not really I saw on the crawl on the bottom of the screen that Mitch Trubisky had a knee injury, but they didn't go into it.
No, they really kind of they treat the Bills like, oh, okay. What was with Tua? Well, he goes on Levitard's podcast, and great interviewers do this, Danger. They get you to loosen up and say things maybe you shouldn't say. You forget your bearings. And I'm trying to hop into the mind of Tua Tagovailoa, why he would have such pointed comments about Brian Flores and how, we could. I don't have it in front of me, but the gist was just a terrible coach, and it made me feel terrible about myself. And well, that spurred a lot of conversation, not just on our show, but on Infinity Sports Network. The angle I took was, well, we've all had bosses or coaches that were hard on you. So, at what point did it become not okay to have that type of coach? The other angle being here, all right, well, Brian Flores, you got to cater your style to who you're dealing with. And if you didn't recognize that Tua actually was the guy that needs the pat on the head rather than the kick in the butt. I think the great head coaches figure that out. But where did Brian Flores come from? He came from the school of Belichick, where there is no really pat on the head. Ever.
Right.
So Brian Flores coached a certain way. And I also said this, I didn't think it made Tua look good at all. If you want to put this in your book someday, just as the great Tony Dungy, he eviscerated Marty Schottenheimer in his book. Wow, okay. But that's in a book, and you've already won your Super Bowl, and great, you're making some money off of it. You're getting ready for the start of the season. You're bad-mouthing a defensive coordinator who was once your head coach, and you guys are going to face one another. It just didn't sit right for me from the Tua standpoint, where people would say, yeah, Tua's right. He should. Okay, but what do you gain by that?
He didn't gain anything by that. At this point, it feels like Tua believes that now that he's got his extension, he has arrived, right? Because a guy like Flores would have you believe when he was coaching Tua that Tua wasn't the dude. Let's not forget that it was Flores who was there, kind of forced to draft Tua, and then an owner who wanted to basically tamper with Tom Brady and try to get Tom Brady to come to South Florida. And Flores was in the middle of all of that before he got out of there and got out of there the way he got out of it. Flores might just be best suited as a defensive coordinator and maybe not the head coach, the guy that does have to have that ability to modify their style to the player that they're talking to. I think that's what good leaders do. Good leaders recognize that you might have a style, but your style might not be for everybody, so you have to kind of modify your style and hope that what you're saying resonates with that person in a certain way. And you're right. Everybody has probably had a boss or a coach that you didn't gel with, or you just didn't, you didn't see eye to eye on. What do? You look for greener pastures. You move on. You adapt. You inherit some of those traits that you might not even like without even realizing it because you're a product of your environment.
Yeah.
So Tua might just be feeling a little bit better about himself now than he did when he first came into the league, with a guy like Brian Flores telling him that he wasn't cut out to be the quarterback of that team. Now that he's got his deal, I'm just going to unload. And you're right, it's not a good look. And for what it's worth, I didn't know that Flores needed to respond, but his response was perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and to have some of his players standing behind him, honestly, that was the kind of the turn in the story today. Like 3 days, it's a good story. Like 3 days later, like we're still talking about there's new angles, and there's Flores talking about that with his players in the background. And you know what? I came with the impression, all right, he's grown a little bit.
Yeah.
He showed some humility.
Right.
And is this the worst offense in the world at all? Let's be clear. Brian Flores, nobody could win when the owner's telling you to tank.
Yeah, that's right.
Literally.
That's right.
And the owner is taking private meetings with Tom Brady. What does that have to do with Brian Flores?
Yeah. If anything, Flores is a victim of being in a horrible situation, saying yes to being in a horrible situation that he probably didn't know it was going to be a horrible situation. I mean, there's only 32 of these. I don't know if you've heard these head coaching jobs. So he took one, and it was with a bad team, with a sketchy owner, and the frustration probably got to him. But hearing him say that he's learning and growing, and that these comments are, he hopes that he isn't what those comments are, and that they hurt him, but he's going to be better. He said everything he needed to say, and I think that it's over. I can't wait. Now we've got a little underlying storyline here for when the Vikings and the Dolphins square up later on this year, to see just exactly if Brian Flores has anything special dialed up for Tua. That'll be fun.
Yeah. We've got to get to our guy here coming up.
Sigmund Bloom.
Sigmund Bloom.
Yeah, he'll be joining us next. We'll talk some fantasy football. Sigmund Bloom stopping by. Football guys stopping by next in the sports bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. You can pull up a stool and join us at 866-4FAN. And if you have a question, a fantasy football question for Sig, feel free to hit us up now on X at The Fan Rochester.
You're listening to